Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hi, I am Justin Daniels. I am a shareholder and corporate M&A and tech transaction lawyer at the law firm Baker Donaldson, advising companies in the deployment and scaling of technology. Since data is critical to every transaction, I help clients make informed business decisions while managing data privacy and cybersecurity risk, and when needed, I lead the legal cyber data breach response brigade.
And this episode is brought to you by No One Can Hear the Weird Hand on the Head, Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there's greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. Too bad we're not doing pictures because we're matching and blending. Our pictures would be so nice. I'm in light blue. You're in dark navy. Got like a little blue in my jacket.
That's what I'm like. I walked upstairs. I'm like, what happened? You're like all dressed up today.
Now I have a jacket on and everything.
I know. I was like, whoa, what happened here?
I know. Fancy things are at play. And now we're going to go into fancy people because we have Erin Alva, who is a Harvard Berkman Klein Center fellow and founder of Alva Strategy Center, advising organizations and enforcers on privacy, security, and AI governance. Previously, Erin was a lead tech advisor at the FTC, where he was instrumental in driving the agency's approach to privacy and security enforcement. And Erin, I can't wait to dive into all of this FTC enforcement fun today.
Happy to be here.
That's your turn.
What?
That's your turn.
Oh, I'm supposed to talk now?
Yeah, that's your
Okay.
turn. I ran out of cue cards.
So, Erin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. My career journey started over 20 years ago. I was working in cybersecurity research at a U.S. national laboratory. And oftentimes, what was a cybersecurity research issue had a technical response as like how you fix things or how you make things more secure. Everything was technical in terms of how to fix or make things secure. And I was curious about, well, what are the law and policy levers that you can pull in order to also make things more secure or more private? And so I took that to doing a joint master's in information management and law degree at the University of Washington that was supported by the National Science Foundation. And then for 10 years, I was at the FTC, as Jody mentioned, as a technologist and tech advisor, working on some of the biggest privacy and security as well as AI cases out of the FTC. And now I'm recently left and started my own venture, and I'm excited to be out in the world to get to share my expertise and knowledge and help companies and enforcers really understand these really vexing and complex security and privacy and now AI challenges.
Amazing. Well, let's dive in because you described yourself as a technologist and we've talked about privacy enforcement. Can you share more about what that actually means and how that shows up in work?
Yeah. So the term technologist is one that it means a lot of things in different areas. So I would say at the FTC, a technologist in privacy enforcement meant that me and other technologists at the agency would get to sit alongside attorneys and describe these technically complex issues and then help at every stage of the privacy investigation. at the FTC, from understanding at the outset what potential cases that the FTC would open, to helping write technically precise questions, asking the company questions about what the privacy issues were, to describing to attorneys like what are potential harms, privacy harms, and how this impacted consumers, all the way to, and we can get to this further, some of the remedies that I would help develop and write alongside and negotiate alongside case teams.
And I think most people know, but I think what's also interesting is the idea of a technologist is popping up more and more in the state enforcement agencies, like in Cal Privacy. They are very proud of their technologists that they have, and other states I think are following suit. So something that I think is important for people to remember when they think, oh wait, do they actually know? Yes, they do.
Yes, yeah, and that has been a definitely a growth area, especially in the last 6 or 7 years. For a while at the FTC, I was the only technologist that would work on both antitrust competition and consumer protection issues. And then in the later years of when I was there, the number of technologists had grown up to 13 or so. And you're right, state AGs and state agencies are hiring in-house technologists now, which really gives attorneys the ability to kind of understand these complex issues much more efficiently and quickly now.
So, speaking of technology, when you think back to the earlier days of your work, what still feels really relevant even today?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing that feels relevant today is a lot of the privacy enforcement from that earlier decade that I was at the FTC, the earlier time then, is still kind of popping up now. One case I worked on back in the earlier days of my time there was Vizio, where Vizio was taking pixels on your smart TV and had their own database that identified what you were watching, and were licensing that to advertising and analytics companies. That is relevant still today. Like the Texas attorneys general just brought a number of cases against smart TV manufacturers for the same conduct, the same sort of tracking from what the FTC said in Vizio in 2017 was unfair. And what came out of the Vizio was sort of an early days imagining of some remedies, like Vizio had to delete all 4 years of TV viewing history, so they couldn't benefit further from that conduct that the FTC said was unfair at the time.
I'm curious, as you think about the Vizio case, and I was a Vizio consumer and remember that case vividly, to what you just described now with what Texas is doing, are companies forgetting these cases? Are the learnings just the technology's changing and they want to adopt the next technology? It feels like we're repeating in, I mean, that's almost a 10-year period.
Yeah, no, it's as a as a former enforcer, it's a hard thing to understand and grapple with and figure out. Is a lot of cases like Vizio and others, like the FTC only has the authority to bring one case against one company, and that company is then under a typically 20-year legal order to change their conduct. And the theory from like Dan Soloff and Woody Herzog and others is that that creates a common law of privacy that informs other companies like Vizio's competitors that they should bring their practices to the level at which Vizio now has to do under FTC order. But it's using a 110-year-old law. It's limited. We don't have a comprehensive federal privacy legislation in the states, and so there's not a technically specific legal requirement for the other companies to have to follow the same uh, letter of the law.
It's interesting. I've always gone with, I guess, that common law of privacy concept,
Yeah.
and many peers have as well. You would
Yep.
always look to those cases. Here were the learnings. Don't do that.
Yes. 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 And I think that's my view. I think also a lot of the privacy cases I worked on were bipartisan. Privacy and security are still bipartisan issues. This current FTC is still bringing security and privacy cases. So I think that also bolsters the idea that, what comes out of the FTC is something that companies should take note of.
So you were right in the middle of the Facebook case. Is there anything that really stuck with you from that experience?
Uh, Other than it being a wild time in my life, I was the sole technologist on the Facebook privacy matter after Cambridge Analytica, that resulted in the $5 billion penalty, and then Facebook um, had certain 20-year order requirements to have to stand up a mandated privacy program and so forth. Um, One of the things that I think is that stood out to me then, that still, continues to happen today, is that the cost of not aligning your privacy controls with consumers' expectations is still high. I mean, and that is still also, from a legal perspective, what is partly like what unfairness means. And so back then Facebook had they had a privacy setting that said, hey, yes, you can give away your friends' data, but that went well beyond the expectations of what each individual thought was happening, or and became a scandal that hit the public attention and Congress's attention, that led to the Facebook case. And so that sort of lack of clarity and not aligning your expectations with what people and consumers think is still, I think, super relevant now.
Justin, I know you have lots of thoughts about this case.
Well, look in our notes. Aaron, repeat again. How much was the fine?
$5 billion.
$5 billion. So what was today's theme? And then we had our episode the other day, Jody. So why do you think most companies are like Vizio or some of these other companies ignore these FTC orders?
Because they want to keep making money and
Because they're
using the data.
right, because they're so rich. A $5 billion settlement to them is just merely the cost of doing business. Now, if the FTC could haul some of these people and give them a little jail time, that would change things dramatically. So that's my point.
I mean, that's a totally a fair point. I think that, especially the last 5 years of work I did at the FTC was a lot on developing remedies that create bright line rules that actually prohibit conduct, right? And that, versus a monetary fine, or needing to stand up a privacy program that's more process based. On a violation, GoodRx and BetterHelp being prohibited from sharing, health data for app purposes, I think is a clearer line sort of remedy that actually cuts at the heart of the incentives of, data use and data disclosure and so forth.
I mean, I guess, Aaron, I know we're going to segue here into talking about remedies because honestly, at the end of the day, that's really what you do at the FTC. You identify problems and come up with remedies from your time there and what you do now. But I guess my question around that is when we talk about remedies, it seems to me another remedy you could have is what if you had a rule that said the default privacy settings on all these different devices and apps had to be privacy enhancing as opposed to what we have, whereas the default is you give everything away unless you want to go through about 6 different screens. So I'm just curious, you know, what do you think about things like that? Or what are some of the themes you've seen, still seeing today around remedies that actually have impact? Because it's clear $5 billion is not having enough impact.
Yeah, I think you're right about the switching the defaults. I think that is a powerful kind of piece where, it still gives people the choice to change back to what, but it sets that baseline at, a more privacy preserving piece. One case where the FTC did this was in Epic Games, which was like a children's privacy case, where kids who were or children who were on Epic Games's platform were getting harassed, verbally harassed at times while going through their game, and so the the one of the remedies in Epic Games, other than the $500 million penalty, was to switch the default for kids to saying the audio during gameplay is off by default.
It's interesting you say that because I heard $500 million, but I skipped right to switching the toggle differently because now when I think about what Aaron's talking about, now go to OpenAI or some of this artificial intelligence and what are some of these impact on kids. So to your point, Jody, there's like this common law privacy idea around some of these rulings, which kind of set guardrails. Obviously, none of the AI companies are listening to any of those guardrails.
It's always been the challenge of, well, it happened to them, maybe it won't happen to me. And is that really going to be what I have to worry about, or is it just them?
That is always going to be back and forth, and I know there's a lot of AI laws that are out there that are being enacted, in the States, and there's the EU AI Act as well. Like those are some of the constraints that we're starting to see, but from existing laws on the books, the FTC and state AG saying this is deceptive or this is unfair is still applies to you could say all of commerce in America. It still applies to AI, uses and situations.
We talked about smart TVs and data collection. We move and advertising. We had a big tech player advertising personal information. Health and pixel tracking was, it seems like a multi-year focus for the FTC and then even, some states and some other areas. So can you talk a little bit about the health arena? And if a company is listening right now and they're in the health space, what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, so the health arena is one of those areas where if you think of even back to an earlier, I think 2011 privacy report from the FTC that identified here are certain sensitive or high risk categories of data. Health is quite prominent. It comes up. It's pretty apparent that your own health condition or inferences made on about your health is really sensitive and personal. And so a lot of the FTC cases in the health pixel tracking arena involved, going to say GoodRx or BetterHelp and, say GoodRx, for instance, putting in your prescription that you want a coupon for. And putting in the amount and the drug dosage and where you want the prescription served. But what GoodRx had was a Facebook pixel on their website that was sending this sensitive health information to Facebook for certain advertising purposes. And that is the piece that through all these FTC cases and other actions, it has been the reinforcing this is an unexpected use of your personal sensitive health information, and for purposes that the consumers didn't often know about or consent to, and that's conduct that is when we talk about remedies, prohibited for these companies under order now.
And if you were to think about one or two steps for a company listening who might be in that health
Yeah,
mess, what should they take from this?
I it ad tech is a very complex, dynamic space. But so sitting down and auditing and understanding uh, what data is being sent to other players that to other entities like advertising entities I think is a really good step. Number one is sitting down and looking at your website, identifying, oh, do I have an area where I'm collecting or asking for sensitive info? And now, like, what pixels do I have on this site? What's happening to this on this site? What ad tags do I have on this site? Getting an understanding of where your data is going or where your consumers' data is going is I think a critical first step. And then taking that next action and taking that action to say, I need to limit this. I need to change my practices here if it is sending sensitive info, and go through and then make it a repeatable part of your sort of marketing process.
Those are good tips. Thank you for sharing. Someone needs to learn from these cases. I don't want my prescription information shared anywhere.
But the fines don't seem to deter anyone.
Well, we're here doing our part.
I see.
And again, these pixel cases are not just fines; they are GoToRx is prohibited from sharing sensitive health data, info for advertising purposes.
And then you have states that are looking at this. So now we have our state privacy laws, and these are some of the issues that they're working in. And we are doing our part to remind people of these cases and remind them not to do it. So what's next? We have another goodie.
Location data.
Location data.
No. So location data has been another big area. What should companies really understand about handling that can of worms?
Uh, yeah, very much like we're talking about the sensitive or high risk health or data buckets. You think of health data, but you also think of location data and the potential harms that can cause for somebody knowing where you are, where you've been, and what that means for you. And so a lot, for companies where location data is actually necessary to serve the service, then the takeaway is data minimization and use purpose limitations is only use the location data for the delivering of the service, but not also, and don't use it also for other purposes that aren't expected or consented to by consumers. That I think is a key part. And there's a number of technical ways to kind of deal with location data that manage the risk and lower the sensitivity, like coarsening the data, so that it's not a precise data point. It's more of like, here's what happened in that kilometer, mile or kilometer. There are other techniques as well to kind of consider as part of managing location data use.
And location data is another really interesting one because the definition of precise geolocation seems to differ depending on who you're asking.
Yes, I spent a lot of time alongside case teams in the FTC's location data orders, precisely defining location data, what it means, what is included, what's not included. And so and I think that was a key role for a technologist, is getting those technical definitions right to be clear about, what we're talking about. Those technical definitions in legal orders or in descriptions really matter a lot. And so there are some subtle differences in the definition of location data, even across the four current, FTC orders, in market, X mode, Gravy Analytics, and Mobwala. But also it's pretty clear that it it's not just GPS data that is considered location data. Like if it's precise about a consumer device, it is still location data. Um, for instance, like your routers have like a unique identifier, and there's a technique called Wi-Fi triangulation where your phone can, understand how far certain number of unique routers are from your device, and that can be sometimes more precise than GPS data. And so include knowing that and including that as part of the definition of location data and working with those nuances is a lot of what I worked on in terms of helping case teams and providing clarity to companies about what's included.
Well, we've talked about health and location, which are definitely considered sensitive data types amongst a lot of people, but there's more. It's not just those. Aaron, can you tell us what some of the other kinds of data that you are seeing that might also be considered sensitive data?
Yes. So based on FTC cases, the FTC has also taken action in uh, browsing data um, as another kind of area where where you go on the web and what you navigate to and what you're seeing and your internet browsing history is considered sensitive or high risk. So that came from the Avast case. Children's data, obviously, we have a law in the books, COPPA. Children's data is inherently sensitive as it relates to kids. Um, and that definition is not just kids, it's increasingly from FTC orders expanding to teens in certain cases. Um, Driver behavior data. One of my last matters I worked on was the General Motors matter that deals with the sensitivity of driver behavior data, both location data coming from where you were driving your car and also how you were driving your car, like were you speeding, were you hard braking or hard cornering, that sort of thing. What you were listening to on the radio in the car, that sort of thing. Um, uh, those are the main buckets, and then there have been past actions from the FTC around AI related to in high risk situations like Rite Aid or the recent OkCupid case about sharing um, photos and demographic and data for that ended up being used for training facial recognition models by another company.
Justin, I know you have some thoughts that you want to talk about in AI.
I've been enjoying the remedy conversation with the FTC.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure
No,
we covered all your fun.
no. We can take a day off from AI. I can't remember the last episode where we didn't discuss it. So, um, Aaron, after all the different topics we've covered, and we've covered a lot of ground here in the last 20 minutes, if we step back, what do you think some of the biggest lessons companies should take away from what we've talked about?
Yeah, and the biggest lessons I think for take as takeaways, and they apply both to privacy and as well as to security. These are not those are both applicable here. One is how limiting having use purpose limitations are increasingly critical today. Knowing as a company how you're using the data, being narrow and clear about what you're using the data for, and having that use purpose limitation that also is tied to how long you're retaining the data, making sure you're not using it for other uses. This is a kind of a reoccurring theme in a lot of the cases from the FTC, as well as some of the new legislation that's coming out in terms of privacy, new state privacy laws and so forth. Um, Another area is, as I mentioned, data retention and minimization. And this is also particularly true for security, is if limiting the scope of a potential breach, it means limiting the amount of data you have on hand that might be exposed, right? Having those data retention and minimization kind of practices is a critical part, I think, of some of the takeaways. Uh, Sensitive data, like all the categories we talked about, so health, location, browsing, driver behavior, children, so forth. Those all require, I think, heightened care, and the FTC's made that quite clear, and both in previous administrations and now, that seems to be still quite relevant. Uh, and then I think finally, like technical details really matter. It it's really important, especially in not to bring up AI again.
It's okay. It's here.
It's important to have a clear scoped understanding of like what it is we're talking about, what are the problems, what are the definitions, and I think that translation and back and forth with attorneys and technologists about all getting on the same page of this is exactly what we're talking about, or this is what, health data means or location data means. That is, I think, critical to us having like a clear way to move forward and have a dialogue and have clarity to the market about, what it is, enforcers and companies need to take note of. So those are my overalls.
Those are really good tips and themes and reminders. And given all you know about how technology works, especially in the privacy and security space, what best tip would you offer? I can only imagine the kinds of conversations you might have with the, with those around you.
Um, to me, the best tip I have to offer, um, is is changing up the emails that you use to sign up for marketing or loyalty programs. Is I often like to take, even say my Gmail address and do a plus sign and then have another name to it. And that does kind of two things. One, it throws the data brokers and ad tech ecosystem off, because oftentimes, email addresses are unique identifiers where all of your activity is associated with an email address or a hashed email address. And then that all gets put in one bucket, and used to create inferences about you for ad targeting or whatnot. So by changing up the email address, its email still comes to you, but it really makes it harder to kind of piece all those information pieces together for that ecosystem. So that would be my personal tip.
Thank you for sharing. We have heard that one a couple times. A lot of people who like that idea.
So, Aaron, what do you like to do for fun when you're not doing all of this technologist stuff?
That's a really hard question. No. I like to row. And so I have the pleasure of living on an island, and so I get to go out on the harbor in a rowboat, whether it's a quad or an eight, or even yesterday I was out on a single, which was somewhat terrifying. But it's a beautiful, good workout and practice, and it's one of the things that kind of gets me outside and is really pleasant.
That sounds so nice and so peaceful.
It is.
I don't think you appreciate how fast he might be rowing.
I didn't say it wasn't hard. I just said it might be nice and might be peaceful. Because I bet you he might be rowing in his area without police boats coming at you, like what you did to me when I was in the Washington.
Oh, I did nothing like that.
Yeah. It was great. But let's get back to you, Aaron. If people
I
would
want to
like
hear
to
this
connect,
story at some point.
if was lovely. We were in kayaks and I don't remember which busy harbor, and there's a police boat coming right at me in the direction that Justin has us going. And he's off in another one, and I'm just looking at this police boat right over here. And that was not fun.
So you still seem traumatized.
I am still traumatized. I had one kid, you had another kid, and that was not nice. That is my story, everyone. But I do want to make sure that people hear and know how to connect with you, Aaron.
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, Aaron Alva, as well as my own personal site is strategycenter.tech, and all the rest of my contact details are on the site directly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing an insider's view from all these different FTC cases. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.